In the scriptures, there is a very noteworthy statement which says that Ananda yaiva bhutani yatante yani kanichit. What does it mean? It states that Sarvani bhutani yatante anandayaiva means every creature in this creation is actually striving for Ananda and Ananda alone. Now this is a very sweeping observation. If you just look into the behavior of every single creature in this creation, what is the basic motive behind their actions? The basic motive is everybody wants to be happy in life. Everybody wants to attain Anandam. Now, the basic problem with this pursuit of Anandam, as we see in the society or in the world, is that we look for Anandam where, truly speaking, Anandam is not present. So we are looking for happiness and Anandam at places where, actually speaking, it is not present. That is why in our life we find people running after different objects, pleasurable objects, desirable objects, with the belief that these objects, when enjoyed, will give us happiness. But truly speaking, with every enjoyment comes the understanding that these objects are not fit enough to give us lasting happiness and joy. Of course, this kind of an understanding comes to a thinking person, a person who is thoughtful and who has got some deeper insight into the nature of experience that we have in life. So essentially all the objects which are appearing to be desirable in this life, they are defective. Defective for this very reason that they cannot make us permanently happy. They cannot give us lasting fulfillment and joy. That is why in the Bhagavad Gita there is a beautiful shloka which says that Yehi sansparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate. It is a very clear evaluation of the nature of experiences that we have when we enjoy objects which appear to be pleasurable and desirable. Gita says that Yehi sansparshaja bhoga. Every experience, pleasurable experience, which emerges when our sensory system comes in contact with the sense objects. Every such pleasurable experience is in fact dukkha yoni. It says it is the womb of dukkha. Now this is a very remarkable observation which is a reality for thoughtful people. People who are not that thoughtful and not that insightful into the nature of human experiences may not understand this. But the reality is that whenever we have sensory pleasures or pleasures coming from the contact of the sense organs with the sense objects, such experiences, truly speaking, is the womb of misery and suffering in the long run. It is called as dukkha yoni. And then the next line Gita states, Adyantavanta kaunteya. These experiences have a beginning and they have an end. Therefore, nateshu ramate buddha. Wise people would never indulge in such pleasures. So interestingly, these pleasures which usually people pursue in life, unknowingly, they become the cause of endless sorrow and suffering in the lives of human beings everywhere. Another very beautiful observation comes from the Kathopanishad also. Kathopanishad states a beautiful mantra there, states that Paracha kaman anuyanti bala te mrityuryanti vitatasya pasham. The Upanishad states, Paracha kaman anuyanti bala. Paracha means the external objects which are desirable. Bala anuyanti means ignorant people, they pursue these external objects which appear to be desirable and pleasurable. But actually what is happening to those people who are pursuing these external objects? It says, Te mrityuryanti vitatasya pasham. These people who are pursuing these pleasures of life, they are actually speaking straight away entering into mouth of death. Mrityuryanti. Vitatasya. Vitatasya means that death which is all pervading, which is everywhere. Every time the creature, the living creature, indulges into the pleasures of the objects, what is actually happening is that it is straight away entering into the mouth of death. That is why we should remember that none of these objects in life can make a human being satisfied. They have no capacity to give us the lasting happiness and joy in human life. Srimad Bhagavatam says, Najatu kama kamanam upabhogena shamyati Krishna havisha vartmeva bhuya eva abhivartate. That these desires, the desires for pleasures of life, can never be fulfilled by enjoyment. It is not possible for a person to become fulfilled by indulging in these pleasurable and desirable objects in life. In fact, what happens is that the more the person indulges in these pleasurable objects, the more the desires gets inflamed. Now, in the scriptures we again find a very beautiful graphic picturization of people who pursue external pleasures and objects of sensory satisfaction. Swami Vivekananda, in his complete works, you will find in one of his talks, very beautifully he states that these people who ignorantly pursue happiness in sensory indulgences, they are like bullocks which are used for grinding oil seeds in grinding mills. We all know in India, in Indian villages, we have these grinding mills where oil seeds are grounded by using bullocks. And these bullocks, in order to make them go round the wheel, they are actually tempted by a piece of straw or grass which is placed just in front of their eyes. And the bulls, by the greed for having that grass, begins to move, and thus it begins to turn the wheel of that oil mill. And in this way, the bullock keeps on pursuing that piece of grass but never succeeds in getting it. And in the course of that, what is happening is the oil seed gets grounded. This is what precisely happens with every creature in this creation. We are all running after these objects, and with the expectation that these objects can make us happy. But in turn, what is happening is we are turning the wheel of Prakriti, the wheel of nature, and the nature is getting its job done through us. So this is the whole story of so-called the life at the physical plane, where human beings, in their belief that these different objects which are desirable and pleasurable, that will make them happy. They keep on pursuing these objects and they keep getting cheated and deceived. And this is the story of human life at the physical plane. So naturally the question comes, what is the source of true happiness? What is the true source of Anandam? In one simple sentence, the scriptures unanimously state, and all the great masters, they also have told the same thing. True Anandam comes only from spiritual enlightenment. Only when we realize our true nature. Because our true nature, that unchanging dimension of the human personality, which the Vedanta speaks of as the Atman, it is this Atman alone which is by its very nature blissful. So it is the Atman which is the true source of bliss and joy. And when this Anandam is experienced in life, at that time we really understand that what we are really looking for life is not outside in any objects, but it is lying deep within our own personality, that unchanging dimension of the human personality, which is a matter of investigation. Now, there is a very interesting incident in Swami Vivekananda's life. We all know that after Swami Vivekananda's Chicago addresses, maybe during that very year, perhaps in 1893 or 1894, Swami Vivekananda several times met Robert Ingersoll. The Robert Ingersoll was an agnostic, and he had antagonistic feelings and ideas about religion and spirituality, and he was also one of the very famous orators of that time. And it is said that Robert Ingersoll and Swami Vivekananda met more than once, and they had exchanged their ideas about different matters, and especially regarding religion and spirituality. So both of them had different approaches towards life. So as Ingersoll was a person who was an agnostic, he didn't believe in religion and spirituality. So in one such conversation, of which Swami Vivekananda himself makes a reference in one of his class talks, Ingersoll tells this to Swamiji. He says that, I believe in making the most out of this world, in squeezing the orange dry, because this world is all we are sure of. Ingersoll is saying that, he says that this is the world, this world is the only thing we are sure of. So I believe in making the most out of this world, by squeezing this orange of this world dry. So Swamiji says, I know a better way of squeezing this orange than you know. And he says that, you see, I know a better way to squeeze the orange of this world than you do, and I get more out of it. I know I cannot die, and so I am not in a hurry. I know that there is no fear, so I enjoy the squeezing. I have no duty, no bondage of wife, children, and property. And so I can love all men and women. Everyone is God to me. Think of the joy of loving man as God. Squeeze your orange this way and get 10,000-fold more out of it. Get every single drop. Now this is the way in which the spiritually enlightened person makes the best out of this world. If you really want to make the best out of this world, the way is through renunciation and spiritual enlightenment. The first thing that as a human being we are supposed to do is first get spiritually enlightened. When we have the spiritual enlightenment, then we will be able to make the best out of this world. Swamiji's words are very significant. The first thing he says that, I know. It is a knowledge. It is self-knowledge. Swamiji says that I know I cannot die. This is the biggest discovery that can happen at the human plane of existence. Without this knowledge, all of us are gripped with the fear of death. And it is this fear which actually makes us miserable in life. Nothing can make the human being miserable more than this one great phenomenon called death. But when we understand, as human beings, our true nature is immortal, that is what Swamiji is referring to here. He says that I know I cannot die, therefore I am not in a hurry. All this haste is only because we are scared that any time this life is going to come to an end. Whereas for the knower of the truth, there is nothing like death. He is above death, so he is not in a hurry. And secondly, he has got no fear. He is absolutely above fear and fearless. And that's why he enjoys squeezing this orange of this world. Thirdly, Swamiji says that for such an enlightened person, he doesn't have any duty. He doesn't have the bondage of wife, children, and property. This is the biggest attainment in human life, when we are not bound to anything in this creation. Swamiji says that I am not bound to wife, children, and property. I can love all men and women equally. This equal love for everybody, this comes from spiritual enlightenment. And lastly, he says, just imagine the joy of loving the man as God. What can be greater than this? When we have this kind of an enlightenment and understanding, it is in and through this that we can, truly speaking, squeeze this orange of this world dry and get every single drop out of it. So this is the real way of making the best out of this world. In other words, we can say this is the way we can truly enjoy this life and this world, and not the other way in which we blindly indulge in sensory pleasures. That is the way to death, and this is the way to enlightenment, and in and through enlightenment, having the best out of this human life and the world. In this very context, Sri Ramakrishna gives a beautiful illustration. In his Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we find this beautiful story coming there. Sri Ramakrishna states a story. We all know that when we read Gospel, this idea is again and again placed before us. Sri Ramakrishna says, first God and then world. First spiritual enlightenment and then world. This is the constant idea which we find coming in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So there Sri Ramakrishna tells a story. A man goes to a town, a city from his village, and he is carrying his load of luggage and baggage with him. And as soon as he comes to that city, the first thing that he does is, he finds for himself a room where he can place all his luggage and baggage there. So he finds a room, he keeps his luggage there, and then he goes out to see the beautiful city. And in the course of moving around that city, he suddenly meets his friend there. His friend also had come from his village, and he was carrying all his baggage on his head. So that friend asked this first person, that how is that you're moving around in the city so freely? So the first person says, you see, as soon as I came into the city, the first thing I did was I found a place where I can lay my luggage and baggage. I first found my room. This is a very significant story with a great moral. Sri Ramakrishna says, having come to this strange world, this creation, our first job is to find our room. We have to find our true abode. Once we find our true abode, then we can go out in this creation to enjoy this creation. But without finding our true abode, if we move around in this creation, that is going to be the cause of endless suffering and misery. Now the question comes, have we found our true abode? If not, it is time to think about it and we work in this direction.